Imagine two apartments, same city, same neighborhood, almost the same rent. In the first apartment lives someone making $95,000 a year. You walk in and it looks like what most people would call a successful life. A big TV, an expensive couch, a kitchen packed with appliances, closets overflowing with clothes, a spare room that slowly turned into storage. At first glance, it looks like this person is doing great, but there's one detail you can't see in the picture. They check their bank account with a knot in their stomach. They live with the feeling that if something goes wrong, there isn't much room to breathe. Now picture the second apartment. This person makes $52,000 a year. Inside, everything is simpler. A normal couch, a reasonable TV, a kitchen with what actually gets used, a closet filled with clothes that actually get worn, a spare room that's still a spare room, not a storage unit for old decisions. And this person looks at their money calmly. They have savings, they have investments, they have breathing room, they have options. So here's the question. How does someone making almost half as much feel so much more financially secure? Because this is not really a story about income. It's a story about how stuff quietly takes your money, your attention, your space, and eventually your freedom. A lot of people believe financial peace comes naturally when income goes up, but real life often works differently. As people earn more, something else grows right alongside the income. The cost of maintaining their life. Not necessarily because life got meaningfully better, but because now it takes more money just to keep everything going. And that's the trap. You can make good money and still feel financially cornered, because every dollar you earn already has a job before it even arrives. If I had to put the whole message into one simple idea, it would be this. Money doesn't stay with the people who earn the most. It stays with the people whose lifestyle doesn't consume everything they make. There's one idea that can change the way you think about buying almost immediately. Everything you own costs you twice. The first cost is obvious, it's the purchase price, the amount you pay at checkout, but there's a second cost and most people don't think about it clearly enough. That's the cost of ownership. What's included in that? Space. Maintenance, cleaning, storage, repairs, upgrades, mental clutter, and maybe most importantly, the money that is no longer working for you because it's tied up in things. Buying feels like a one-time event. Ownership almost never is. Let's make this real with a few examples. Buying a treadmill sounds like a smart move. You tell yourself, I'm investing in my health. But then it takes up part of the room. People start hanging clothes on it, you have to walk around it, clean around it, move around it, and maybe it gets used a couple times a month. At that point, the question is no longer what the treadmill cost. The real question is what its presence is costing you over time. Or take a boat. People usually calculate the purchase price. What they don't fully calculate is storage, insurance, maintenance, seasonal work, repairs, and all the extra spending that comes with owning the thing. One purchase often brings an entire ecosystem of expenses with it, or a $15,000 home gym. You could say, I invested in convenience. And maybe you did, but you could also look at it another way. That same money could have been growing, building your safety net, creating more stability, creating more choice. So the real question is not just, can I afford this? It's also this. What am I buying instead of strengthening my freedom? Now here's a rule that helps people make much clearer decisions. Before you buy something, don't just ask, how much does it cost? Ask this instead. How much will this cost per real use? Because price by itself can be misleading. A $300 jacket you wear 3 times is an expensive mistake. A $400 jacket you wear for years might be a great purchase. A $2,000 mattress you sleep on every night for a decade could be one of the best values in your home. A $150 kitchen gadget you use twice probably is. This rule pulls people out of fantasy and back into reality. Because a lot of purchases happen under the story, I'm definitely going to use this. But if we're being honest, the real story is often, I really liked the idea of the version of me who uses this. And those are two very different purchases. Here's another filter that's incredibly useful. Look around your home and ask yourself, if this item disappeared today, would I actually go out and buy it again? Not well, it was expensive. Not maybe someday I'll use it. Not I might need it eventually. Would I buy it again? That question creates a very honest moment for a lot of people. Because a huge percentage of what we own is not in our lives because we still truly need it. It's there because at some point we bought it, received it, kept it, or never reevaluated it. Old tech, clothes we don't wear, kitchen gadgets we never really liked, boxes of useful later. Remnants of old hobbies, gifts we feel guilty getting rid of, and if you wouldn't buy it again, there's a good chance it's no longer serving you. There's a good chance you're the one still serving it, storing it, moving it, organizing it, making room for it. One of the most expensive habits people have today is replacing things that still work. The phone is fine, but a new one came out. The car is reliable, but you want something newer. The TV works great, but the new one has a better screen. The couch is comfortable, but you're tired of looking at it. And this is where one simple idea matters a lot. Boredom is not failure. Wanting something new is not the same thing as needing something new. I'm not saying never upgrade anything. I'm saying a huge amount of money gets spent not solving real problems, but feeding the feeling that life needs to feel refreshed all the time. But if something is still doing its job, replacing it doesn't automatically improve your life. A lot of the time, it just makes your financial life tighter. Here's something else that matters. Most people overestimate willpower and underestimate environment. If your life is set up so spending takes 10 seconds but saving takes effort, you're probably going to spend more, not because you're weak, because the system is stronger than the intention, so it helps to do two things at the same time. First, make spending a little less automatic. Remove saved cards, delete shopping apps, unsubscribe from promo emails. Use a 24-hour rule for non-essential purchases. Second, make saving automatic. Set up an auto transfer on payday. Use a separate account. Move money into savings or investments before it blends into everyday spending. Financial stability is rarely built on motivation alone. It's usually built on boring but powerful default settings. Now here's a strange little exercise that works surprisingly well. Count what you own in one category. How many t-shirts do you actually have? How many mugs? How many pairs of shoes? How many chargers and cables? How many kitchen tools do you barely touch? People almost always underestimate how much they own. As long as it stays vague, the mind doesn't push back. But once there's a number, something shifts, because one more shirt feels small. But shirt number 48 feels a little different. Counting creates awareness. And awareness makes it much harder to keep buying on autopilot. A lot of money also gets lost because people don't buy a need, they buy hope. Hope for a new version of themselves. They think, I'm going to get into campings. I'm finally going to take photography seriously. This is the year I really commit to fitness. This is going to be my thing now. And right away they buy the full setup. But there's a huge difference between I like the idea of this and this is actually part of my life. So a much better approach is to rent first, borrow first, test first. If the interest stays, you'll buy more intentionally and usually more wisely. If it fades, you save money, space, time, and that low-grade guilt that comes from owning one more thing you feel like you should be using. This may be one of the biggest turning points in the whole conversation. If you never decide what enough looks like for you, you never feel like you've arrived. Income goes up and expectations rise with it. The home starts to feel a little too small. The car starts to feel a little below your level. The clothes feel like they need an upgrade. Vacations need to get nicer. Tech needs to feel more current. And this can go on forever. That's why it's so important to sit down and define honestly. What kind of home is enough for me? What kind of car truly meets my needs? What level of comfort already makes my life good? Where is the line between quality and endless consumption? That's not limitation, that's freedom. Because once you define enough for yourself, you stop spending your life chasing standards that were never really yours to begin with. Most people measure wealth through visible things. But if we're being honest, real financial strength is not best measured by what someone has. It's measured by what they're free not to do. Can they leave a job that's draining them? Can they survive a stretch without income? Can they move? Can they help family? Can they take time off? Can they say no to money when the price is too high? That's a much more honest test. A person with a high income and huge obligations can look impressive from the outside and still be deeply trapped. And a person with a more modest income and real financial margin can be far more free. So if I had to define wealth simply, I'd say this. Wealth is not the number of things you own, it's the number of decisions you can make without fear. A lot of people try to fix their life in one big burst, one giant cleanup, a bunch of bags, a wave of motivation, a feeling of fresh air. But if the system behind the clutter doesn't change, the clutter comes back. That's why small, regular resets work better than dramatic purges. Once a week, notice what came into the house. Once a month, review one category. Once a quarter, step back and see whether things are building up again. The same is true with money. You don't have to wait for a crisis to reevaluate your spending. It's much better to make small adjustments as you go. If you want to feel this in real life, not just agree with it in theory, start simple. First, find 10 things in your home that you would not buy again. Second, use a 24-hour waiting rule for non-essential purchases. Third, count 3 categories of items that tend to pile up in your life. Fourth, set up at least one automatic transfer to savings or investments. And fifth, write down what enough means for you in the big categories: housing, transportation, clothing, tech, and lifestyle. Because when enough is undefined, the market defines it for you. And when you define it for yourself, you start to build from a place of clarity. So let's go back to those 2 apartments. One looks richer, but inside there isn't much room, and I don't just mean physical room. There isn't much margin, not much quiet, not much freedom. The other one looks simpler. But inside it holds something that's much harder to buy with impressive stuff. A calm, a joys, resilience, and the feeling that your life is not hanging on every next paycheck. And maybe that's the whole point. Not everything that looks like wealth actually creates wealth. Sometimes real financial strength does not look like more. Sometimes it looks like less that needs to be managed. Less that needs to be maintained. Less that drains your attention. And more that gives you room to breathe. Because in the end, the real question is not how many things you can afford to buy. The real question is, how much freedom do you still have after you buy them?